The galaxy had been at war for years. The enemy was called the Vorak Swarm, and no one knew where they came from. They were not like normal enemies. They did not want land, wealth, or peace agreements. They wanted only destruction. Planet after planet was consumed by their endless fleets. Their warships were dark, insect-like things built for one purpose: to kill. At first, the Galactic Alliance had stood together. Dozens of species, hundreds of fleets, all united in defense of civilization. Great speeches were given and promises of unity were made. The galaxy believed that together, they could not be defeated. But belief shattered when the first Alliance fleets met the Vorak in battle. The Vorak ships were merciless. They crashed into Allied formations like waves of steel and fire. Whole armadas disappeared in hours. Colonies were erased in days. Even strong and ancient species, ones who had ruled the stars for thousands of years, began to tremble. Fear spread faster than the Vorak. In secret councils, old allies began to whisper to one another, "The swarm cannot be stopped. We must protect our own." One by one, species withdrew their fleets from the front lines. First, it was only a few. Then more followed. They closed their borders, pulled their soldiers back, and left entire regions undefended. The Alliance was dying. On the colony world Rinvalis, a meeting was called. Representatives of the remaining Alliance members gathered in a huge chamber that once symbolized unity. Now, it felt empty. Voices argued loudly. Some demanded more resources. Others demanded retreat. Ambassador Shora of the Valari stood, her voice shaking. "The Vorak cannot be fought. We must retreat and wait until they pass us by. That is the only way our people will survive." Her words made several others nod in agreement. Fear was plain in their faces. But then a voice cut across the chamber, firm and steady. It was Ambassador Jonathan Hale, the human representative. His dark eyes burned with anger. "Pass us by?" Hale said. "You think the Vorak will pass anyone by? They are not raiders. They are not conquerors. They are exterminators. If you hide, they will find you. If you run, they will follow. You cannot outwait them. The only way to survive is to fight." A silence fell. Many of the aliens turned their eyes away. They had already made their choice. Counselor Vor of the Zelkai, a tall creature with 4 arms and silver skin, finally spoke. "Human, you do not understand. Your species is young. You do not know what it means to lose entire star systems. We cannot risk more. We will defend only our own." Jonathan Hale slammed his hand on the table. "And what of those who cannot defend themselves? The weak, the abandoned? You would leave them to die?" No one answered. In that silence, the betrayal was clear. The next day, the Alliance was officially dissolved. Each species declared they would stand alone. Their fleets scattered, borders closed. Messages were sent to Earth, suggesting humanity should do the same if it wanted to survive. But Earth did not follow. On Earth, the mood was grim, but determined. The news of the Alliance collapse spread quickly. Some people were afraid. Some demanded the government retreat as well. But others were angry. At a massive address in Geneva, the human Prime Minister, Elena Kovac, stood before the world. Her words were broadcast across Earth and every colony. Our so-called allies have abandoned the fight. They would leave the galaxy to burn, so long as their own homes are safe. Humanity does not believe in such cowardice. We have seen the Vorak. We know what they are. If they are not stopped, no one will be safe. We cannot abandon those who depend on us. We will fight. We will hold the line. And if we must stand alone, then so be it. Humanity will not run." Her words ignited something inside the human spirit. Across the colonies, volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Factories moved to wartime production. Old ships were refitted and new ones were built in orbit. The fleets of Earth began to gather. Meanwhile, in space stations and shattered colonies, refugees from abandoned worlds begged for help. Their governments had abandoned them, but the humans did not turn them away. On Mars, a massive station was built into a refugee hub. Thousands of alien families arrived every day, broken and desperate. They expected rejection but instead found shelter, food, and care. One refugee, a young Carthani child with gray skin and glowing eyes, looked up at a human soldier and asked, "Why do you help us? Even our own people would not." The soldier, a Marine named Jackson, knelt down. He smiled faintly and said, "Because it's the right thing to do. No one gets left behind." The words spread. Aliens whispered them among themselves. No one gets left behind. It became the new promise of humanity. But the Vorak were not slowing. Their fleets pressed deeper every week. Abandoned colonies fell without resistance. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. In orbit around Earth, the human fleet gathered. Their key. First Wrath Armada, they called it. Thousands of ships, some sleek and advanced, others rough and hastily built, lined up in formation. Their hulls bore fresh paint, symbols of fire and steel. At the center stood the human flagship, UNS Valiant, a massive carrier bristling with weapons. On its bridge, Admiral Sarah Kincaid looked over her fleet. She was a stern woman, her hair gray at the edges, her eyes sharp. She had fought many battles, but never one like this. Her officers waited as she spoke. "The galaxy thinks we will fall like the rest. They think we are too small, too weak, too young. They think we should hide behind our walls. But we are not. Like them. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, world wars. We were born in struggle. We do not run from fire, we walk through it. The Vorak believe they can scare us into surrender. They are wrong. We will show them our answer. Fire and wrath." Her words were carried across the fleet. Cheers erupted. Soldiers slammed their fists against their armor. Pilots grinned with fierce determination. Engineers shouted their pride. The Vorak were coming, and humanity was ready. Far away on the ruined colony of Valaris, alien survivors watched human supply ships land. They had expected to be abandoned, like everyone else had abandoned them. Instead, human Marines stepped out, offering food, medicine, and weapons. The Valari leader, once the same species that had demanded retreat in the council, fell silent. He whispered to his people, "When we ran, they stayed. When we fled, they fought." And across the stars, a message began to spread. The humans have not fled. The humans are preparing for war. In the darkness of space, Vorak scouts watched humanity's movements. They reported back to their swarm lords. The humans were mobilizing, they were gathering fleets. The swarm lords gave only one command: crush them first. The Vorak turned their attention toward Earth. But humanity was not afraid, because when allies fled, humanity had chosen fire and wrath. The Vorak swarm was moving fast. Their fleets were spreading like a shadow across the stars, swallowing colonies and space stations with terrifying speed. Every week, another desperate signal went silent. Every day, the swarm grew stronger. Other species of the old alliance had hidden behind their borders, hoping the swarm would not come for them. They built fortresses around their own worlds and closed their gates to refugees. Their governments thought survival meant silence and isolation. But humanity did not believe in silence. Humanity did not believe in hiding. On Earth, the mood was different from fear. It was determination. Every city echoed with the sound of factories working day and night. Massive shipyards in orbit glowed with sparks as workers rushed to complete new warships. Old freighters were turned into gunships. Civilian industries became military production centers. Soldiers trained in every colony. Young men and women volunteered in numbers that shocked even their leaders. They did not come because they expected glory. They came because they knew the truth. If humanity did not fight, no one would survive. Admiral Sarah Kincaid walked through one of the shipyards above Mars. Below her, the massive hull of the UNS Resolute was nearly finished. Engineers scrambled like ants, welding, plating, installing cannons and wiring systems. "How soon?" Kincaid asked. 3 weeks, Admiral," the chief engineer said. "Maybe 2 if we skip safety checks." Kincaid's Eyes hardened. Skip them. Every day we wait is another colony lost. Meanwhile, the first wave of alien refugees had arrived in human space. Ships crowded with starving families docked at orbital stations. Entire generations had fled with nothing but the clothes they wore. One of the largest refugee stations was built above Mars. It was called Haven. The name spread quickly among the aliens. To them, it was a miracle. On Haven, an alien named Shira from the Alaran species sat holding her 2 children. Her people had been abandoned by their own government, left to die when the Vorak invaded their homeworld. She expected humans to treat them the same way, cold, distant, uncaring. Instead, she found kindness. Human doctors cared for the sick. Human soldiers carried food crates. Volunteers gave blankets and clothes. A young human medic smiled at her children and said, "You're safe here," Shira whispered to herself, almost in disbelief. Safe. Humans make us safe. Word spread across the galaxy. The humans did not close their borders. The humans did not turn away. They opened their arms even as war came closer. But kindness was only half of humanity's answer. The other half was wrath. The first major test came near the colony of Epsilon Eridani, where a convoy of refugee ships tried to escape Vorak hunters. Hundreds of alien families crowded those transports, hoping to reach Haven. The Vorak came for them. Dark warships spiked and jagged emerged from the void. Their weapons tore into the fleeing convoy. Explosions lit up space. Refugee ships screamed for help, their voices filled with despair. "Please, anyone, we are being slaughtered." And then came a reply. "This is the United Nations Navy. Hold on. We are coming." The human fleet arrived. The first Wrath Armada, led by the carrier UNS Valiant, dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Human warships spread in formation, their engines blazing. Admiral Kincaid stood on the bridge of the Valiant, her voice steady. "Target all Vorak vessels. Deploy fighters. Protect the convoy at all costs." Human starfighters launched like a storm, engines flaring blue. Frigates and destroyers moved to shield the refugee ships. Railguns fired, their slugs tearing through the void at impossible speed. Nuclear mines detonated, ripping apart Vorak formations. The aliens watching from the convoy had never seen war like this. Other species fought carefully, always seeking to minimize risk. But the humans fought like fire itself. They dove into the swarm with fearless aggression, using every weapon at their disposal. One Vorak battleship tried to tear through the human line. The UNS Hammerfall, a cruiser, rammed straight into it. Both ships exploded in a flash of light. The crew of the Hammerfall died, but the convoy survived. The aliens on the transports wept as they watched. They had never seen anyone fight with such ferocity for strangers. On the bridge of the Valiant, alarms blared. A swarm frigate was breaking through toward the convoy. "Get me a gunship," Admiral Kincaid ordered. A squadron of human marines responded instantly. Their ship, the Iron Fist, turned and accelerated toward the swarm frigate. "Boarding action," one alien officer whispered in horror. No other species dared to board a Vorak ship. It was suicide. But humans were different. The Iron Fist smashed into the Vorak hull. Explosives blew open airlocks. Human marines in armored suits stormed inside, guns blazing. They fought through corridors filled with insect-like warriors, cutting down everything in their path. Minutes later, the Iron Fist sent a message. Target neutralized, and the Vorak frigate exploded from the inside. The convoy was saved. When the battle was over, the humans had lost ships, but the refugees still lived. Not one transport had been destroyed after the fleet's arrival. A broadcast was sent across the galaxy. Footage of human marines boarding Vorak vessels spread like wildfire. Images of the UNS Valiant shielding refugee ships became symbols of hope. Across distant worlds, aliens whispered the same words, "The humans fight back," but the war was far from over. In the War Council aboard the Valiant, Admiral Kincaid stood with her officers. Around them, holograms of destroyed human ships flickered. Losses were heavy. Humanity was bleeding already. "Admiral," one captain said, If we keep fighting like this, our fleets will burn out in months. Kincaid nodded slowly. Then we will burn. But we will burn the Vorak with us. Her officers stared in silence. No one argued. Humanity was ready to sacrifice everything. Meanwhile, on Haven Station, the refugees gathered in the thousands to watch a human broadcast. Prime Minister Elena Kovac spoke again, her voice firm. The Vorak believe fear will silence us. They believe destruction will break us. But humanity has shown its answer. We will fight not just for ourselves, but for every soul the galaxy abandoned. We will fight with fire. We will fight with wrath. And we will not stop. The refugees cheered. Some wept. For the first time in years, they believed in survival. And in that moment, something changed. Some of the refugees volunteered to fight, alongside humanity. They asked for weapons, training, and a chance to stand against the swarm. Human commanders accepted. The war was no longer only humanity's fight. It was the beginning of something larger. But the Vorak were watching. On their dark homeworld, the swarm lords gathered in a hive chamber. They had expected humanity to break like the others. Instead, humans had stopped their hunters, rescued refugees, and destroyed swarm fleets. The Vorak had no fear, but they recognized a threat. The humans fight without limit, one swarm lord hissed. Then they must be crushed before the fire spreads, another answered. A new command was sent. Vorak fleets began to turn their full attention toward humanity. Earth itself was marked as a target. In the deep void of space, Admiral Kincaid looked at the stars. She knew what was coming. The galaxy is watching us, she whispered. They expect us to fall. We'll prove them wrong. Behind her, the fleet stood ready. Railguns were loaded. Fighters were armed. The war had only begun, and humanity had given its answer, an answer written in fire and wrath. The Vorak swarm did not forget what had happened near Epsilon Eridani. Their ships had been destroyed. Their hunters had failed to slaughter the refugees. Humanity had stood in their way and shown the galaxy a fire no one else had dared to light. Be so. Swarm lords were furious. They had crushed dozens of civilizations without resistance. None had dared to fight them head-on, but now a young and fragile species had humiliated them in front of the galaxy. The Vorak made their choice. Humanity would be erased first. Admiral Sarah Kincaid knew this truth before anyone told her. She had studied the Vorak for years, reading every report, every survivor's account. The swarm never ignored defiance. They always crushed those who dared to resist, and humanity had resisted louder than anyone. On the bridge of the UNS Valiant, Kincaid stood before her officers. A holographic map showed Vorak movements. Red markers spread like blood across the star map, curving toward human space. They're coming, she said. Her voice was calm, but her words carried weight. Every fleet they can spare. They'll come for Earth, for Mars, for Haven. They want to break us before we inspire others. Her captains nodded. Fear flickered in some eyes, but none turned away. They all knew the cost of standing alone, and yet none asked to retreat, because they were human. The first wave came at New Carthage, a human colony world with 2 million settlers and thousands of alien refugees. Vorak warships appeared in orbit without warning, their weapons already hot. But humanity was ready. The Wrath fleets, newly built from every shipyard, had been waiting. Frigates, cruisers, and carriers moved in to block the swarm. The battle was brutal. Railgun rounds ripped through Vorak hulls. Human missiles painted the void with fire. Fighter squadrons darted between massive ships, unleashing torpedoes at close range. The Vorak answered with endless waves of their own. Clawed ships spitting acid beams and swarm drones. On the surface of New Carthage, Marines and refugees fought side by side. The Vorak landed hordes of ground creatures, insect-like monsters, that crawled across cities. Human tanks rolled through the streets, cannons blazing. Refugee soldiers, once abandoned by their own governments, fought with human rifles in their hands. One Marine shouted over the comms, "Hold the line, no retreat." The words spread through every squad, and they held, after 3 days of blood, and fire, the Vorak retreated. It was the first time in galactic history that the swarm had been driven off a world instead of consuming it. News spread like wildfire. Alien refugees across human space wept in disbelief. "They fought for us," an old Valari elder whispered. "When even our own leaders abandoned us, the humans fought." The phrase became a chant repeated in camps and stations. The humans fight. The humans stand. For the first time, hope began to spread, but Admiral Kincaid knew they could not simply defend forever. If humanity only reacted, the Vorak would wear them down. Humanity had to strike back. At a war council on Haven Station, Kincaid stood with Prime Minister Elena Kovac, generals, scientists, and even leaders of refugee groups. "Our enemies believe we are weak," Kincaid said. "They believe we are prey. But prey does not fight like we do. Prey does not invent new weapons in months. Prey does not board their ships and tear them apart from the inside. We are not prey. We are predators. And it is time the swarm learned that." The council agreed. Humanity would not wait for the swarm. Humanity would go on the attack. In secret, labs on Earth and Luna, scientists worked without rest. They studied every wreck of Vorak ships, every captured fragment of technology. Within weeks, humanity unveiled new weapons. The first was the plasma lance, a weapon that fired concentrated streams of superheated energy, capable of burning through even the thickest swarm hull. The second was the Aegis AI system, a coordination network that linked entire fleets together. With it, ships could fight as one mind, reacting faster than any swarm. When the Wrath fleets deployed these weapons, the galaxy watched in shock. The counterattacks began. Human fleets launched raids into abandoned colonies, retaking them from the Vorak. Marines stormed cities that had been crawling with swarm creatures, burning nests and saving survivors. Refugees who had thought their homes lost forever wept as human soldiers raised banners above liberated worlds. Aliens began to volunteer in greater numbers. They trained under human officers, learning brutal close combat tactics, learning to endure losses and keep fighting. Some species were horrified at first, but soon they began shouting human war cries as they charged into battle. One refugee leader, a Zelkai warrior, stood before his people and declared, "We once abandoned these humans, but they did not abandon us. From now on, we are their brothers in war." And so, the Wrath fleets grew, not just human crews, but a coalition of the abandoned, led by humanity's fire. The Vorak grew more desperate. Their fleets attacked with greater fury, but every battle cost them more. Humanity was bleeding. Yes, but so was the swarm. On the bridge of the UNS Valiant, Admiral Kincaid studied a new report. Vorak losses were rising. For the first time in centuries, the swarm was being pushed back. "They fear us," she said softly. Her second-in-command, Captain Torres, frowned. "The Vorak don't feel fear." "Then they are learning," Kincaid replied. But victory had a price. Humanity lost ships, soldiers, entire cities. Every triumph was written in blood. Families across Earth mourned their dead. Refugee camps overflowed with both the saved and the broken. And yet, humanity did not falter. Prime Minister Kovac spoke again, her words broadcast to every corner of human and refugee space. "Yes, we bleed. Yes, we suffer. But we stand. And because we stand, others rise with us. Humanity has always faced impossible odds. We have always fought wars against stronger enemies, but we endure. That is who we are. That is our gift to the galaxy. We will endure, and in enduring, we will win." Her words lit fires in countless hearts. Soldiers swore new oaths. Refugees joined human armies in droves. The Wrath fleets grew larger still. At last, Admiral Kincaid called her captains to a final briefing. A hologram lit up the chamber. It showed Vorak space, deep within the void. For the first time, human scouts had uncovered something no other species had ever found: the coordinates of a swarm staging world. "This is where they are massing their fleets," Kincaid said. Her eyes burned with determination. "We will not wait for them to come. We will take the war to them." The room fell silent. For centuries, no one had dared to invade Vorax space. To do so was madness. To do so was suicide. But humanity was already fighting with fire and wrath. Suicide missions were their specialty. One captain stood. "Admiral, if we do this, many of us will not return." Kincaid nodded. "I know. But if we do not strike, no one will survive. If humanity must burn, then we will burn the swarm with us, and in the ashes others will rise." Slowly, one by one, her captain stood. None refused. The decision was made. The Wrath fleets prepared. Every ship was armed. Every weapon was charged. Marines sharpened their blades and loaded their rifles. Refugees painted human war cries on their armor. The galaxy held its breath. The Vorak thought they had seen the last of humanity. They believed that a young species, still learning its place in the galaxy, could not challenge them beyond its own borders. They were wrong. Humanity was not waiting anymore. They had studied, trained, and bled for this moment. The Wrath fleets, a mix of humans and alien volunteers, moved silently through the void, faster than any swarm patrol could detect. Every ship was armed to the teeth. Every fighter squadron prepared for close combat. Every Marine ready to storm enemy worlds. Admiral Sarah Kincaid stood on the bridge of the UNS Valiant, staring at the holographic map of Vorak space. Stars burned faintly in the darkness, marking the paths humanity would take. In that quiet, she felt the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. Every abandoned world, every refugee saved, every life lost was reason enough to strike. "This is it," she said to her officers. "We go where no one dared. We take the fight to the heart of the swarm, and when they see us, they will know. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not flee. Humanity fights." Her officers nodded. Fear was there, but determination burned brighter. The first target was Zareth Prime, a Vorak staging world where thousands of swarm ships gathered. Reconnaissance had shown that it was lightly defended on the surface. What the swarm did not expect was a full-scale human invasion. The approach was silent. Human warships slipped past patrols guided by advanced stealth systems. Fighters launched in waves, using decoys and electronic countermeasures to confuse enemy sensors. Even the swarm, known for its vast numbers and intelligence, was taken by surprise. The first battle erupted in orbit. Human cruisers fired plasma lances, cutting through Vorak shields like paper. Railguns fired at point-blank range, tearing through the hulls of massive swarm dreadnoughts. Human fighters swarmed like bees, but their sting was deadly precise. Torpedoes detonated near enemy formations, ripping apart clusters of swarm ships before they could react. From the bridges of these human ships, captains shouted commands, their voices carrying over the comms network. The Aegis AI system coordinated every strike, linking every vessel into a single mind. The fleet moved with the efficiency of a predator, anticipating the swarm's movements before they happened. Vorak commanders were shocked. No species had ever fought with such coordination, such ferocity. They had underestimated humanity's fire, and they were paying for it. On the surface, the human and alien forces landed simultaneously. Marines stormed the planetary cities, engaging the swarm in brutal combat. The Vorak defenders were fast, vicious, and numerous. But humanity had trained for this. Squads moved in tight formations, covering each other with suppressing fire. Alien. Volunteers followed human officers' commands, carrying rifles, grenades, and melee weapons. Tanks rolled through streets, laying down fire to protect infantry. Explosions rocked the cities, but civilians were evacuated in advance thanks to careful planning. The battle was long and bloody. Streets were littered with the bodies of swarm soldiers. Fires burned in every district, yet human and allied forces advanced steadily, refusing to retreat. A Zelkai warrior, one of the refugee volunteers, fought alongside human Marines. He shouted as he cut down a swarm creature, "For the humans, for those who saved us." His people followed, inspired by the courage of their new allies. In space above Zareth Prime, the battle raged on. Human carriers deployed wave after wave of fighters and bombers. Vorak reinforcements tried to break through, but every assault was repelled. Human warships adapted constantly, creating traps and ambushes in real time. On the UNS Valiant, Admiral Kincaid watched the fight unfold. She knew that the victory would not come easily. Losses were high. Ships exploded in brilliant bursts of light. Pilots screamed in the void, their courage unwavering. But every destroyed Vorak ship meant fewer, for the next battle, fewer to threaten human and allied worlds. Kincaid spoke to her officers. "We must push harder. Every ship we destroy is a step closer to ending this war. The galaxy believes we are weak. We will show them the truth. We are humanity. We are fire. We are wrath." By the third day, Zerath Prime's defenses began to crumble. Human and allied forces broke through the final lines of Vorak resistance. The planetary surface, once a hive of swarm activity, fell silent except for the sounds of cleanup squads and rescue operations. Human engineers began dismantling Vorak command centers, extracting data and technology for study. Scientists worked quickly to understand the enemy's systems, preparing for the next battle. The aliens who had once fled their homes now walked the streets of Zerath Prime with awe and gratitude. They had seen humanity's wrath firsthand and had survived. But the campaign was not over. Intelligence revealed that the main Vorak fleet was massing near the planet Vorak Prime, their homeworld. It was heavily defended, far beyond any human fleet's size. Many of the human officers hesitated. To strike at the swarm homeworld was almost unheard of. No species had dared before. Admiral Kincaid's eyes hardened. "We cannot wait. If we do, the Vorak will strike us first, and they will destroy everything we have saved. We fight now, or we watch the galaxy burn. Prepare the fleets. We leave for Vorak Prime at first light." The announcement spread across the fleets. Pilots, Marines, and volunteer soldiers cheered. Some cried. Many whispered prayers to their gods, whatever they believed in. Humanity had chosen to go where no one else had dared. They would bring the war to the enemy's doorstep. The journey to Vorak Prime was tense. Every star they passed could hide a swarm patrol. Every jump could be the last. But the Wrath fleets moved with silent purpose. Human ships maintained tight formations, fighters patrolling the perimeter, sensors scanning endlessly. Alongside human ships, alien volunteers shared in the mission. Refugees who had once begged for help now stood shoulder to shoulder with humans. Some were Zelkai, others Velari, Ilaran, and many more. They had learned courage from the humans. They had learned fire and wrath. Captain Torres of the UNS Hammerfall looked at a group of Zelkai Marines training on deck. "Do you think they will survive the next battle?" he asked. "They've already survived the impossible," Kincaid replied. "They've already seen fire and wrath. If they stand with us, they will survive again." At last, the Wrath fleets reached the outskirts of Vorak Prime. The swarm's defenses were immense. Thousands of ships, far larger and more deadly than anything humans had faced, surrounded the planet. Sensor readings showed massive planetary defenses, turrets, shields, and weapons designed to obliterate anything that approached. The swarm thought they had the advantage. They believed humans would retreat. They believed this young species could not face the full might of the swarm homeworld. They were wrong. Admiral Kincaid addressed her fleet. "The Vorak believe they are safe. They are wrong. Today humanity strikes. Today we show them fire and we show them wrath. Every ship, every fighter, every soldier, follow your training. Protect each other. Strike hard, strike fast, and do not stop until the swarm knows our name." Fighters roared into formation. Bombers prepared torpedoes. Marines stood ready in boarding pods. The fleet moved forward, silent and deadly, like a storm heading for the heart of the enemy. The battle that followed would shake the galaxy. Plasma lances cut through Vora hulls. Railgun slugs exploded in swarm formations. Boarding actions tore apart the swarm from inside. Humans and alien allies fought together side by side, screaming defiance at an enemy that had never been challenged like this. Vorak Prime was burning. For every human ship destroyed, 2 more swarm vessels fell. Humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, and yet unstoppable. Every victory inspired more courage, more determination. The galaxy watched and whispered, "The humans are coming, and they cannot be stopped." By the end of the first week, Vorak Prime was fractured, its fleets in chaos, its surface under attack. Human forces had proven that even the swarm homeworld could be challenged. The Wrath fleets were battered, but unbroken. Admiral Kincaid looked at the holographic map of the battlefield. She saw victory approaching but knew the hardest fight was still ahead. "Today we strike the heart of the swarm," she said softly, her voice carrying across the bridges of every ship. "Tomorrow, we end the nightmare for the galaxy." The galaxy held its breath as humanity moved forward, carrying fire and wrath to the doorstep of the Vorak. Vorak Prime loomed ahead like a black wound in space. Its atmosphere was choked with dark clouds and orbital defenses shimmered with lethal energy. Thousands of swarm ships orbited the planet, bristling with weapons designed to shred human warships in an instant. The Wrath fleets held position beyond the outer defenses. Every human and allied vessel was ready. Fighters swarmed the edges, bombers prepared to strike, and boarding pods carried Marines for planetary assault. Admiral Sarah Kincaid stood on the bridge of the UNS Valiant, her eyes fixed on the planet below. She felt the weight of history upon her shoulders. Humanity was about to do what no species had dared: fight at the heart of the swarm. "The galaxy is watching," she said to her officers. "They expect us to fail. They expect us to fall. But we do not fight for glory. We fight for survival, for the abandoned, for every world they thought lost, for humanity, and we will show the swarm our wrath." The first strike was in orbit. Fighters dove through the enemy lines, weaving between laser fire and plasma streams. Human torpedoes cut through ships in massive explosions. The plasma lances fired from cruisers, burning holes in the hulls of the largest swarm vessels. Boarding pods launched, carrying Marines who were ready to fight inside the enemy ships. The Vorak had never faced boarding like this. Human soldiers, armored and determined, cut through corridors filled with swarm warriors. Grenades detonated in narrow hallways, flamethrowers cleared entire decks, and disciplined squads moved like a wave, unstoppable in their precision and fury. A young pilot, Lieutenant Hannah Ortega, maneuvered her fighter through the chaos. She fired missile after missile, her ship shuddering with each hit. She laughed as a swarm frigate exploded beneath her. "They thought we would hide. They thought we would run. Fire and wrath, baby." On the surface, the planetary assault began. Marines and allied volunteers dropped from orbit in massive pods. The Vorak defenders swarmed like insects, their claws and acid-tipped weapons tearing at the first wave. But humans were prepared. Tanks roared across the terrain laying fire to the swarm. Artillery pounded enemy strongholds. Engineers dismantled energy barriers, clearing paths for infantry. Alien volunteers who had once been refugees fought with unmatched determination. They knew they owed their survival to humanity, and now they returned that debt in blood. The streets of swarm-controlled cities were painted with fire and courage. In the orbital command hub of Vorak Prime, the swarm lords panicked. Every attack they unleashed was met with more destruction. Their fleets, once thought unstoppable, were being annihilated by a species they considered insignificant. One swarm lord hissed in fury, "Crush them, destroy them. They are only flesh and bone." Another replied, "They are fire, they are wrath, they will not fall." The swarm had never encountered a foe like humanity. They had faced armies larger, stronger, and older, but none had the resolve, the ferocity, or the will to fight like humans. The battle raged for days. Ships exploded in orbit, streaking debris across the black void. Planetside, explosions rocked cities and the screams of battle echoed across the surface. Every human death was mourned, but each one ignited more fury in their comrades. Humanity did not falter. They pushed forward relentlessly. Prime. Minister Elena Kovacs, watching from Haven Station, addressed the fleet over comms. Her voice was calm, but fierce. Every ship lost is a lesson. Every fallen soldier is a promise. We will endure, we will strike harder. Humanity fights for those who have no one else. Humanity fights for the galaxy. And humanity will win. Chunt. Turning point came when the UNS Resolute, a massive human dreadnought, engaged the Vorak super-dreadnought in a direct assault. The two ships collided in a torrent of fire and metal. Railgun rounds tore through hulls, energy shields flared and cracked, and plasma lances scorched the darkness between them. Boarding teams stormed the enemy ship's interior. Marines moved from deck to deck, eliminating swarm leaders, cutting communication lines, and sabotaging weapon systems. The swarm soldiers fought viciously, but human determination was unbreakable. After hours of brutal combat, the super dreadnought exploded, sending a massive shockwave across orbit. Smaller swarm ships were thrown off course or destroyed in the blast. Humanity had struck the heart of the enemy's fleet, and the swarm reeled. With the orbital fleet weakened, humans and allies began a final push to the planet's surface. Marines charged into the core cities of Vorak Prime. Buildings erupted in flames as flamethrowers and explosives tore through defenses. Alien volunteers fought alongside humans, showing courage that had once been dormant. Some species had never held weapons in anger before, but they now wielded rifles and grenades with deadly skill. The Voraks screamed in rage and fear. They had thought themselves invincible. They had never met a species willing to fight for others, willing to bleed for those who had no hope. But humanity did not fight for hope. Humanity fought to end the swarm. Amidst the chaos, Admiral Kincaid coordinated the fleet. Every ship, every fighter, every soldier was a part of a single goal: victory. Human ingenuity turned the tide. Engineers sabotaged planetary defenses from orbit. Scientists unleashed experimental weapons that tore through Vorak energy grids. Every plan had been tested, revised, and perfected under fire. The swarm had numbers. Humanity had courage, strategy, and the unyielding will to survive. After a week of relentless battle, the main Vorak hive structures were in ruins. Their leadership was destroyed, and the remaining forces were scattered and demoralized. On the streets, Marines raised human and allied flags. Refugees cheered. Humans and their allies had done what no one believed possible. They had taken the swarm's homeworld. Admiral Kincaid stood on the bridge of the Valiant, looking at the burning planet below. She knew losses were high. Thousands of ships had been destroyed. Tens of thousands of soldiers had fallen, but humanity had survived. Humanity had triumphed. The galaxy would never forget. A broadcast was sent across every corner of human and allied space. Prime Minister Kovac addressed the galaxy for the final time in the war. The Vorak believed they could crush us. They believed they could take the galaxy and leave nothing behind. They were wrong. Humanity fought when others fled. Humanity bled when others abandoned. Humanity endured when hope seemed lost. And today, the swarm has fallen. Today, the galaxy remembers that when humanity stands, no enemy can break it. Fire and wrath have won, and the galaxy is free. The aftermath was profound. Planets once lost to the swarm were reclaimed. Refugees returned to rebuilt homes. The galaxy, shaken by the courage of humanity, began to respect and fear the species that had stood alone and won. Former Alliance members returned, humbled by human strength. Some apologized, others observed quietly. Humanity did not seek vengeance or dominance. They simply reminded the galaxy they would fight, they would endure, and they would never abandon those who could not defend themselves. The phrase spread across the stars. When allies fled, humanity answered with fire and wrath. On Earth, celebrations were held. Cities were decorated, and humans and alien allies danced in the streets. Ships returning from battle were welcomed as heroes. Families mourned lost soldiers but honored their sacrifice. Humanity had proved something to the galaxy, and more importantly to themselves, that courage, unity, and unyielding will could overcome even the greatest threat. Admiral Kincaid stood on the deck of the Valiant one final time, looking up at the stars. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "We fought for the abandoned, we fought for the galaxy, and we will never forget what we are capable of. Humanity is fire, humanity is wrath, and we endure." The galaxy was quiet for a moment, as if listening. And then slowly, life began again. Humans rebuilt, aliens thrived under human protection, and the once abandoned worlds looked to a future forged in courage, determination, and unyielding fire. Humanity had won, and the galaxy would never forget.